Dr. Kimberly Johnson stood at the entrance of the Galactic Archives, her heart racing as she took in the impossibly tall crystalline spires that stretched beyond the atmosphere of Centauri Prime. The morning light filtered through the translucent walls, casting rainbow patterns across her standard issue archive uniform. She had spent years preparing for this moment, but nothing in her training could have prepared her for the sheer magnificence of the archives in person. "Welcome, Chief Archivist Johnson," a melodious voice echoed through her neural translator. One of the ancient archivists emerged from behind a crystalline column, its prismatic form shifting like light through water. The beam towered 3 meters tall, its body a constant flow of colors that seemed to respond to its thoughts and emotions. Kimberly bowed deeply, following the protocol she had studied. "Thank you for this honor, Elder Luminant." She kept her voice steady despite her awe. The ancient archivists had safeguarded the galaxy's knowledge for over 50,000 years, and now they had chosen her, the first human, to join their ranks. The Elder Luminant guided her through the entry hall, its crystalline form leaving trails of soft light in its wake. "Your credentials are impressive, but they are not why you were chosen." The ancient archivist's colors shifted to a deep blue, tinged with gold. "Walk with me. There is much to show you before the day ends." They passed through sections filled with holographic data streams and rooms where information danced in patterns of light and shadow. Other species worked at various stations, the silicon-based quantum architects, their bodies geometric perfection, the ethereal crystal harmonies, who communicated through resonant frequencies, and the interconnected Mindweave Collective, whose shared consciousness made them exceptional data processors. Several of them paused their work to observe Kimberly. She caught fragments of their neural communications through her translator. Humans. Too emotional. Uncertain choice. Potential security risk. She kept her expression neutral, though her stomach tightened at their doubt. The Elder Luminant led her to a sealed doorway that pulsed with a soft amber light. "Place your hand on the access panel," it instructed. Kimberly hesitated. "Shouldn't you unlock it first?" "It responds to human touch alone." The Elder's colors swirled with what might have been amusement. "Try." Kimberly pressed her palm against the cool surface. The door responded immediately, splitting open like a blooming flower. Beyond it lay a vast chamber filled with gently floating data crystals, each one containing what appeared to be restricted files. "This is the restricted knowledge vault," the Elder explained. "Only humans have unrestricted access to certain sections. You will understand why in time." A quantum architect approached, its crystalline form rigid with concern. "Elder Luminant, the human has not completed the full security protocols. These sections contain knowledge that has destabilized entire civilizations. The Elder's colors rippled, yet humans have proven uniquely qualified to handle such knowledge. Or have you forgotten the results of the great tests?" The quantum architect retreated, though Kimberly could sense its disapproval. She wanted to ask about these great tests, but something in the Elder's shifting colors suggested now was not the time. "Your primary task," the Elder continued, "will be to organize and maintain these restricted archives. You may notice patterns. You may have questions. I encourage you to seek answers, Dr. Johnson. The truth of why you are here lies within these records." Kimberly nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "And if I find this truth," the Elder's form shifted to a color she had never seen before, one that made her neural translator stutter. "Then you will understand why, out of all the species in the galaxy, humanity was chosen to guard its darkest secrets." It paused, its colors deepening. "And why we believe only humans can prepare the galaxy for what is coming." Before Kimberly could ask more, the Elder glided away, leaving her alone in the vault. She turned to the countless floating data crystals, each one containing knowledge deemed too dangerous for general access. Yet somehow her species was trusted with them all. "Well," she whispered to herself, reaching for the nearest crystal, "let's find out what humanity did to earn this trust." 3 weeks into her new role, Kimberly sat cross-legged on the floor of her private research chamber, surrounded by floating data crystals. The gentle hum of the archive's containment fields filled the air as she studied the scattered references to Earth that kept appearing in the most unlikely places. She had expected to find mentions of her homeworld in the first contact records, but they were showing up in files dating back centuries before humanity reached the stars. "Display temporal anomaly record T7249, she commanded. The nearest crystal pulsed with soft light, projecting a holographic document that rotated slowly in the air before her. The text was written in the ancient archivist's crystalline script, which her neural translator rendered into standard galactic. Test subject species 4671. Terra/Earth. Observation period 7, she read aloud. Information leak protocol. Stage 3 implemented. Selected population segments exposed to carefully constructed evidence of. She leaned forward, eyes widening. Of the void hunger phenomenon. Kimberly's fingers flew across her datapad, cross-referencing other files. The void hunger was one of the galaxy's most closely guarded secrets, a cosmic horror that even her highest security clearance only gave her partial access to. Yet here was evidence that humans had been deliberately exposed to knowledge of it centuries ago. A quiet chime announced the arrival of Mist of Dawn, one of the crystal harmonies who had been more welcoming than most. The crystalline being's form sparkled as it entered the chamber. "You have discovered the testing records," Mist of Dawn observed. Its voice is a melody of chiming notes. Kimberly gestured at the scattered documents around her. "These aren't just records, they're evidence of a massive experiment. The Council secretly tested every spacefaring species by leaking information about cosmic horrors to them." She pulled up another hologram. The quantum architects were exposed to knowledge of the time fractures. The Mindweave Collective learned about reality inversions. Each species was carefully monitored to see how they'd react. "And what have you learned about humanity's test?" Mist of Dawn's crystalline form shifted to a questioning harmony. "That's just it," Kimberly frowned. "We weren't just tested once. The records show multiple controlled leaks over centuries. The Council exposed different human populations to knowledge of the void hunger, the star eaters, the memory plagues." She shuddered at the names. "But I can't find the results. Every time I think I'm close to seeing how we reacted, the records branch off into cross-references about human culture instead." Mist of Dawn chimed softly. "Perhaps those cultural references are the results." Kimberly paused, a new thought forming. She pulled up a series of human cultural records from the test periods. Computer, display Earth entertainment media from the targeted populations, focusing on themes that match the leaked information. The air is filled with fragments of stories, movies, and games, tales of cosmic horrors that bore striking similarities to the classified threats. But they weren't presented as scientific documents or warnings. They were entertainment, art, even comedy. "We turned them into stories," Kimberly whispered. "When we caught glimpses of these horrors, we transformed them into fiction, into art." She turned to Mist of Dawn. "Is that significant?" The crystalline being's form resonated with what might have been approval. "Consider how other species reacted when tested. The quantum architects attempted to weaponize the knowledge. My own people, the crystal harmonies, suffered devastating resonance fractures from the psychological impact. The Mindweave Collective tried to deny what they had learned, causing schisms in their shared consciousness. And humans just wrote stories about it. You did more than that." Mist of Dawn chimed. "You faced these truths without breaking, processed them through creativity, and continued to function. That is far rarer than you might think." Kimberly looked back at the scattered records with new understanding. The tests weren't just about exposing us to horrible truths. They were about finding a species that could handle knowing them. Indeed, Mist of Dawn's form sparkled. "And now you must ask yourself, why was humanity's response so unique? And why is that quality so valuable to the ancient archivists now?" Before Kimberly could respond, an alarm echoed through the archives. Red light pulsed through the crystalline walls, and she heard the unmistakable sound of a containment field failing somewhere in the depths of the vault. The containment field alarm blared through the archives as Kimberly and Mist of Dawn raced toward the source. They found a small gathering of archivists outside the temporal wing, where an elder luminant was already reinforcing the compromised field with waves of prismatic energy. Minor breach contained, the elder announced, its color shifting from urgent red to calming blue. Return to your duties. They found a small gathering of archivists outside the temporal wing, where an elder luminant was already reinforcing the compromised field with waves of prismatic energy. Minor breach contained, the elder announced, its color shifting from urgent red to calming blue. Return to your duties. As the crowd dispersed, Kimberly noticed something odd. While the alien archivists hurried away with visible signs of distress, the quantum architect's geometric forms showing fractal irregularities, the Mindweave Collective's members clutching their connected consciousness nodes, her fellow human archivists were already making light of the situation. Just another Monday at the office, Lisa Johnson laughed, no relation to Kimberly despite the shared surname. Remember that breach last month? At least this one didn't turn anyone's coffee into quantum foam. Kimberly watched as their humor seemed to create a ripple of calm through the area. Even some of the alien archivists appeared to relax slightly, though they clearly didn't understand the jokes. Back in her research chamber, Kimberly pulled up the test results she'd been studying before the interruption. Computers display psychological impact patterns across all tested species when exposed to knowledge of cosmic threats. The air is filled with flowing diagrams showing various species' responses. The quantum architect's results showed aggressive spikes in weapons research and defensive technology development. The crystal harmonies data revealed devastating resonance cascades through their collective consciousness. The Mindweave Collective's graphs displayed massive denial responses, their shared mind fragmenting rather than accepting the revelations. Now overlay human responses, she commanded. A new pattern emerged, startlingly different from the others. Where other species showed sharp spikes of fear, denial, or aggression, the human response curve was almost gentle. There were initial fear responses, yes, but they quickly transformed into something else entirely. Computer, analyze human cultural output during test periods. The data shifted, showing an explosion of creative works. Novels, films, art pieces, even jokes, all processing the terrifying truths they glimpsed. But more than that, the psychological stress indicators remained remarkably stable. Just like today, Kimberly murmured. We joke about it, tell stories about it, turn it into art, and somehow that helps us cope. Mist of Dawn, who had followed her back to the chamber, chimed thoughtfully. We had always seen human creativity as an interesting quirk. Perhaps we fundamentally misunderstood its purpose. Kimberly pulled up more recent data, tracking psychological responses to various archive incidents. The pattern held true. While other species showed increasing stress levels with each exposure to difficult knowledge, humans maintained stability through their unique coping mechanism. It's like we developed an evolutionary shield, Kimberly said, excitement building as the pieces fell into place. Not a physical one, but a psychological one. We don't just deny the horror or try to fight it. We acknowledge it, process it through creativity, and keep going. She brought up footage from the recent containment breach. Look at the response patterns. Other species either fled or froze, but humans immediately started making jokes. And it wasn't just deflection. The humor actually helped them think clearly and maintain functionality. Mist of Dawn's crystalline form sparkled with interest. This explains much about why the ancient archivists chose humans for unrestricted access. You can face terrible truths without breaking. Not just face them, Kimberly corrected, but help others face them too. Did you notice how the other archivists started calming down when my human colleagues made jokes? We're not just protecting ourselves. We're creating a shield that can extend to others. Before Mist of Dawn could respond, the archive's central communication system activated. The elder luminant's voice echoed through the crystalline chambers. all chief archivists to the central chamber immediately. Priority Alpha. This is not a drill. Kimberly met Mist of Dawn's gaze, the earlier pattern analysis taking on sudden new significance. Something tells me we're about to test this psychological shield of ours on a much larger scale. The central chamber of the archives stretched upward in a spiral of crystalline columns, each one containing the compressed knowledge of entire civilizations. Kimberly stood among the gathered chief archivists, noting how the other species clustered together, leaving a noticeable gap around the human contingent. 3 elder luminants materialized in the chamber center, their prismatic forms synchronized in a dance of deep purple and midnight blue. The middle elder spoke, its voice resonating through their neural translators. We have detected a critical knowledge breach in Sector 7 of the temporal wing. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing streams of data bleeding through failing containment fields. Kimberly recognized the patterns. These were files from the restricted section, the ones only humans could access. The breach released information about the convergence. The elder continued, causing a wave of distress to ripple through the alien archivists. The quantum architect's geometric forms began to fragment at the edges. A high-pitched keening emerged from the crystal harmonies. Kimberly exchanged glances with Lisa, who raised an eyebrow and whispered, "Convergence. Sounds like a tech startup's wet dream." Despite the gravity of the situation, Kimberly had to suppress a smile. The human capacity for irreverence in the face of cosmic horror was exactly what she'd been studying. The elder's colors shifted to a deeper shade of purple. For those unaware, the convergence is a cyclic event that occurs every 50,000 years. Reality itself becomes malleable. The barriers between dimensions thin. What we consider absolute laws of physics become more like suggestions. The last convergence marked the end of the previous cycle, another elder added. Only our species survived with our knowledge intact. We have spent 50 millennia preparing for the next one. Kimberly noticed the elder's colors were fading, becoming almost transparent at the edges. Something about their deteriorating forms tickled at her memory. A detail from her research about their species' longevity. "You're dying," she said suddenly, drawing surprised looks from the other archivists. "Your species. You're not just preparing for the convergence. You're reaching the end of your natural lifespan, aren't you?" The elder's colors rippled in acknowledgement. "We are the last of our kind. We have extended our lives far beyond their natural span to maintain the archives until suitable successors could be found." Their forms flickered. "We had hoped for more time to prepare you all, but the knowledge is spreading. Already we see the effects." Around the chamber, the signs of psychological stress were becoming more apparent. The Mindweave collective was splitting into disconnected individuals, their shared consciousness fragmenting under the weight of the knowledge. Several quantum architects had frozen in place, their geometric forms locked in recursive patterns of denial. Only the humans seemed relatively stable. Kimberly watched as her colleagues processed the information in their characteristic way. "So reality's going to glitch like a bad video game," one of them mused. "Better start speedrunning those physics exploits. Makes you wonder if the last convergence is where all those mandala effect memories come from." Another added thoughtfully, "The elder luminants observed these exchanges with what appeared to be satisfaction. This is why we chose humanity to access the restricted archives. Why have we spent centuries testing and preparing your species? The convergence cannot be prevented, but survival depends on maintaining stability, while reality itself becomes uncertain. Your ability to process and adapt to such concepts without losing functionality is unique." And now, the third elder spoke for the first time, its form barely visible. "We face a more immediate crisis. The knowledge is spreading beyond the archives. Without proper preparation, it will cause widespread panic and societal collapse across the galaxy. We need your help to contain it." Kimberly stepped forward, her mind already racing with possibilities. "You don't want us to stop the information from spreading," she realized. "You want us to help others process it, to teach them our way of facing the unfaceable." The elder's colors brightened briefly in confirmation. Precisely, Chief Archivist Johnson. The question is, are you and your fellow humans ready for such a responsibility? Behind her, Lisa chuckled softly. Ready or not, here comes existential crisis management human style. At least we've had plenty of practice. Kimberly stood in her research chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing centuries of human responses to cosmic horrors. After the elder luminance revelation about the convergence, she had retreated here to think, to understand, what made her species so different from the others. Display Earth Entertainment Media Database. Keyword search, cosmic horror, she commanded. Tales of impossible geometries, of vast beings beyond comprehension, of reality-bending phenomena that mirrored the actual threats documented in the archives. Mist of Dawn entered, its crystalline form dimmed with concern. The knowledge continues to spread. 3 crystal harmony enclaves have already shattered from exposure. The quantum architects are attempting to solve it like an equation, but their models keep breaking down. The Mindweave Collective. It paused. They are fragmenting. Kimberly nodded absently, her mind racing as she studied the patterns before her. Computers display psychological stress indicators for human populations exposed to cosmic horror concepts, overlaid with creative output in the same regions. The data flowed into a new configuration. As stress levels rose, so did creative expression, but not randomly. There was a clear pattern, a psychological mechanism at work. We're not just making stories, Kimberly whispered, the realization hitting her. We're building cognitive frameworks. Look at this. She pointed to a cluster of data. When humans encounter something too vast or terrible to process, we don't just fight it or flee from it. We create a framework to understand it. We turn it into narrative. She pulled up examples, ancient myths explaining natural disasters, modern stories processing technological fears, art transforming incomprehensible cosmic phenomena into manageable metaphors. The ancient archivists didn't choose us despite our tendency to joke about serious things. Kimberly continued, excitement building in her voice. They chose us because of it. We developed something no other species has, a third option beyond fight or flight. We learned to face the horror, acknowledge it, and then transform it. Mist of Dawn chimed thoughtfully. But how does humor serve this purpose? My people find it difficult to understand why humans laugh at terrible things. Kimberly grabbed a data crystal containing records of human responses during various crises. Humor isn't just deflection. It's a tool. When we joke about something terrifying, we're not dismissing its reality. We're claiming power over our response to it. We're saying, this is horrifying, but I can still function. I can still think. I can still laugh. She brought up footage from recent archive incidents. Look at how other species react to crises. They either try to solve it immediately or shut down. But humans, we make jokes, tell stories, create art. And while we're doing that, we're actually processing the horror, breaking it down into manageable pieces, finding ways to live with terrible knowledge. A notification pulsed on her display. More reports of psychological breakdowns across the galaxy, as knowledge of convergence spread. But amid the reports of panic and denial, there were scattered accounts of populations staying stable. Each one corresponded to areas where human archivists were stationed. We're not just processing it for ourselves, Kimberly realized. We're teaching others how to process it too. Every joke, every story, every piece of art, they're all tools for facing the unfaceable. We're building psychological technology that other species can use. Most of Dawn's form brightened with understanding. This is why the ancient archivists tested humanity so extensively. They weren't just looking for a species that could handle terrible knowledge. They were looking for one that could teach others to handle it too. Kimberly looked at the spraying reports of the convergence crisis, seeing them with new eyes. The ancient archivists are dying. They can't guide the galaxy through the next convergence. But they've spent centuries preparing humanity for this role, not just as record keepers, but as guides. We're the ones who can teach the galaxy how to face reality when reality itself breaks down. A priority alert flashed across her display. All chief archivists report to the restricted vault immediately. Implement Protocol Omega. Kimberly took a deep breath. Time to put our special talent to work on a galactic scale. The restricted vault hummed with energy as Kimberly addressed the gathered human archivists. Behind them, the elder luminance forms had become so transparent they were barely visible against the crystalline walls. Time was running out. Protocol Omega isn't just about containing the Kimberly explained, gesturing to the holographic displays showing the spreading crisis. It's about teaching the galaxy how to process it. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to tell stories. Lisa raised an eyebrow. You want us to turn the convergence into a bedtime story? Not sure that's going to cut it. Chief. Kimberly shook her head, pulling up the psychological data she'd been studying. Not simplify it. Contextualize it. Look at how we process cosmic horror. We don't deny the terror. We frame it in ways our minds can handle. That's what the archives have always been about. Not just storing knowledge, but making it processible. She activated the central display, showing the structure of human narrative frameworks. We're going to create a new system for managing restricted knowledge. Instead of just containing it, we're going to build cognitive frameworks around it. Think of it like a mental technology, using story, metaphor, and yes, even humor, to make the incomprehensible comprehensible. The human archivists gathered around as Kimberly demonstrated her idea. She took a piece of convergence data, the way reality would become malleable, and wrapped it in layers of metaphor and narrative. The result was still terrifying, but it was terrifying in a way minds could process. Look at how we handled the containment breach, she continued. Our jokes weren't just stress relief. They were tools for processing the situation. They let us think clearly while other species were shutting down. Now we need to systematize that approach. The team worked through the night, building what Kimberly called narrative containment protocols. They took the raw, terrible knowledge of the convergence and created frameworks for understanding it. They developed metaphors that different species could relate to, stories that made the incomprehensible graspable without diminishing its reality. Mist of Dawn observed their work, its crystalline form brightening with each successful test. The crystal harmonies in Sector 7 have stabilized, it reported. Your story framework allowed them to process the knowledge without shattering. Even some of the quantum architects are beginning to understand. Kimberly watched as her team implemented the new system throughout the archives. Knowledge wasn't just stored anymore, it was contextualized, wrapped in layers of meaning that helped minds process it safely. They created what she called cognitive scaffolding, structured ways of thinking about terrible truths that let you face them without breaking. It's working, Lisa announced, checking the latest reports. Psychological stability is improving in all sectors using the new protocols. The Mindweave Collective is even starting to reintegrate. The elder luminants observed silently, their fading forms showing hints of approval in their color patterns. Kimberly realized they had known this would happen, and had been preparing for it since they first discovered humanity's unique way of processing cosmic horror. We're not just archivists anymore, Kimberly told her team as they watched their work spread through the galaxy. We're teachers, guides. We're showing the galaxy how to face its own darkness without flinching away or breaking under the strain. One of the younger archivists, Tom, looked up from his workstation. So that's why the ancient archivists chose us. Because we're good at telling stories. Because we're good at finding light in darkness, Kimberly corrected. At taking the terrifying and making it not less terrifying, but terrifying in a way we can bear. That's what they saw in all those tests, not just our ability to handle horrible truths, but our ability to transform them into something minds can process. A priority alert flashed across the main display, temporal distortions increasing across multiple sectors. The convergence was beginning. Kimberly straightened her shoulders. Time to put our skills to the ultimate test. The galaxy needs to learn our way of facing the unfaceable, and it needs to learn fast. The first wave of the convergence hit like a ripple through reality itself. Kimberly watched from the central chamber as the archive's crystalline walls briefly turned liquid, then solid again, their color shifting through impossible spectrums. Around her, the human archivists maintained their stations with remarkable composure, even as space itself seemed to hiccup. "Well," Lisa commented, adjusting a holographic display that had twisted into a Mobius strip, "at least the laws of physics are taking a vacation. Maybe gravity will finally learn to relax." A smile tugged at Kimberly's lips, despite the situation. This was humanity's gift in action, the ability to face the collapse of reality itself and still function, still think, still joke. More importantly, their attitude was having an effect on the other species present. "Narrative containment protocols holding at 70% efficiency," Tom reported from his station. "The crystal harmonies are using our metaphor frameworks to maintain stability. They're actually singing about the space-time distortions, turning them into music." Kimberly nodded, remembering how they had helped the crystal harmonies process the crisis. Instead of letting them face the raw terror of reality breaking down, they had given them a way to think about it through harmony and resonance, concepts their species inherently understood. Mist of Dawn approached, its form flickering with the temporal distortions, but maintaining coherence. "The quantum architects have adopted your mathematical poetry protocol. They are processing the reality shifts through equations that incorporate narrative elements. It is unprecedented." The elder luminants materialized in the chamber center, their forms now almost completely transparent. The lead elder's voice was barely a whisper through their neural translators. "This was what we saw in humanity all those centuries ago. Not just resilience, but the ability to teach resilience, to show others how to bend without breaking." Around them, reality continued to shift and warp. The archive sensors showed similar distortions spreading across the galaxy. But wherever the human archivists' narrative containment protocols had been implemented, civilization remained stable. People were afraid, yes, but it was a productive fear, channeled into stories, art, and even humor. "Look at this," Kimberly said, pulling up a report from a distant sector. "They're holding convergence parties on some worlds, turning it into a shared experience, using comedy and creativity to process their fear collectively." She checked another report, and here, a group of crystal harmonies and quantum architects are collaborating on what they call reality jazz, using music and mathematics to map the fluctuations. The youngest human archivist, Leah, looked up from her station. "The Mindweave Collective is requesting more human literature about reality distortions. They say our stories about parallel universes and time paradoxes are helping them maintain psychological stability. That's because we've been preparing for this our whole existence," Kimberly realized. "Every story we ever told about the impossible, every joke we made about the incomprehensible, it was all practice for this moment. We were building cognitive tools without even knowing it." A massive temporal surge rocked the archives, causing several walls to briefly turn inside out. The elder luminance forms flickered dangerously. "The final phase approaches," the lead elder announced. "The moment when reality becomes most negotiable. Someone must maintain order through the transition, must help others process what comes next." Kimberly met the elder's fading gaze, understanding at last why humans had been chosen, why they had been tested so thoroughly. "We'll guide them through it," she promised. "Not by denying the chaos or trying to control it, but by teaching them what humanity has always known. How to dance with the darkness, how to laugh in the face of the impossible, how to tell stories that make the incomprehensible comprehensible." The elder's colors shifted one last time, a pattern of absolute trust. "Then it is time. Time for us to pass on our final secrets, and for humanity to take its place as the galaxy's new storytellers. The keepers of terrible truths, the teachers of how to face the unfaceable." Around them, reality trembled on the edge of transformation, waiting to see what stories would shape it next. The final moments of the convergence transformed the archives into a kaleidoscope of impossible geometries. Reality flexed and twisted like a living thing. But within the chaos, The human archivists maintained their posts with remarkable steadiness. Their narrative containment protocols had evolved into something more, a framework for processing reality itself. Network status. Kimberly called out, watching as the elder luminance forms grew increasingly transparent, stable across 87% of connected sectors. Lisa responded, her hands dancing through holographic displays that occasionally turned inside out. The quantum architects are actually starting to enjoy this. They've turned reality fluctuations into a multi-dimensional art form. Tom chuckled from his station. The crystal harmonies are calling it the Great Remix. They're using our storytelling frameworks to compose symphonies about reality's dance. The lead elder luminant drifted forward, its form now barely visible. It is time for the final transfer. The archives must have new guardians who can maintain order through chaos, who can teach others to dance with darkness. Its colors shifted to a pattern Kimberly had never seen before. Are you ready to receive our last secrets? Kimberly straightened her shoulders and nodded. Around her, the human archivists gathered, their presence steady despite the reality storms raging outside. The elder's form began to dissolve into pure light, its ancient knowledge streaming into the archive systems. We have watched humanity for centuries. The elder's voice echoed as its physical form faded. When other species flood from terrible truths, you turn them into stories. When the universe showed you its horrors, you responded with creativity. When reality itself trembled, you learned to laugh and keep walking forward. The other elders began to fade as well, their combined knowledge flowing into new forms that the human archivists could access and understand. The archives themselves seemed to shift, responding to their new guardians. The final secret is this, the elder's voice whispered. The universe is not cruel or kind, it simply is. But through story, through art, through laughter in the dark, you make it comprehensible. You teach others to do the same. This is why you were chosen, not just to keep knowledge, but to make it bearable. As the last elder faded into pure energy, the reality distortions reached their peak. For one breathtaking moment, every possible version of the archives existed simultaneously. Kimberly saw countless variations of herself and her team, each one facing the crisis in their own way. Then reality settled, finding a new equilibrium. Mist of dawn approached, its crystalline form reflecting the newly stabilized archive walls. The transformation is complete. The human narrative protocols have been integrated into the very structure of the archives. Kimberly watched as her team began working with their new systems. Knowledge wasn't just stored anymore. It was wrapped in layers of story and meaning, made accessible through carefully crafted narratives that helped minds process even the most difficult truths. Look at this, Leah called out excitedly. The Mindweave Collective is requesting to establish a permanent creative exchange program. They want to learn more about human methods of processing cosmic horror through art. The quantum architects are proposing a joint project, Tom added. They want to combine their mathematical models with our storytelling techniques to create new ways of understanding reality. Kimberly smiled, understanding at last what the elders had been preparing for all along. We're not just archivists anymore, she told her team. We're teachers, storytellers, guides. We're the ones who show others how to face the darkness and find light within it. She looked out at the transformed archives, where representatives of various species were already gathering to learn humanity's methods. The galaxy needs more than just knowledge. It needs ways to process that knowledge, to live with it, to grow from it. That's our real gift to the universe, not just the ability to face terrible truths, but to transform them into stories that light the way forward. Outside the archive's crystalline walls, the stars seemed to shine a bit brighter, as if acknowledging the dawn of a new era, one where humanity's greatest strength would help guide the galaxy through whatever darkness lay ahead.